Good evening, I hope everyone's well today, thank you for watching. Housekeeping first of all, we've had another Reform UK victory, and this is in Babley Council, District Council, and it's Councillor Mark Rowland, and he was elected last week on the 17th, I believe. So well done, Mark Rowland. I think you're going to do good things, so keep up the good work. Now, I seen a clip on TV last night, and it was between Matt Goodwin on Doobs' TV show on GB News against a pretty green Lib Dum from Liverpool, the group leader up in Liverpool Council. I think his name's Chris Cashford. It was like watching a great white shark toying with a harbour seal. It was quite comical. None of his arguments stacked up, and it's a testament to the arrogance and the hubris of the ruling class. This needs to change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the clip now, and let's analyse it together, and then you can make up your own minds.
What we need to be looking at is processing people who are here legally, properly and faster so that they can actually work, but people who are here illegally, we need to make sure that they're kicked out.
So the answer to you is more safe and legal routes, processing people who get to this country quicker, which basically means approving them, allowing them to stay, allowing them to work. How is that going to resolve the migration crisis? That's going to send a big, loud message to everybody across Africa and Asia that if you get to the UK, you'll be able to stay in the UK. Now, I don't remember voting for that. I don't remember that being in any party manifesto, but that is exactly what's happening, and that is why people are so angry.
I'll pause it there. Matt's completely correct on this point. He's also right when he says that processing migrants quickly, what that actually does, it means that they get waved through, essentially. To process a migrant refugee status in the UK, the process to reject is twice as long as it is to confirm. And it also gets difficult because how do you verify? Essentially, you have to take their word for it. So it's essentially an honest system for people that are broken into the country. It's less hassle for the Home Office and the people that are processing these claims to actually let them stay than it is to eject them from the country. As a result, the majority of people that actually apply under our current system get given leave to remain. That's completely correct.
Not at all, Matt, because if you look at the migration to this country over the course of the last few years since Brexit, what you'll find is that many EU nationals have left this country to go back to the European Union.
No, I understand that.
And many African nationals and from elsewhere in the Middle East and other places have come into this country. So what you will actually do is make it more appealing for legitimate people to come to this country and for illegal migrants not to come to this country.
Well, that's clearly not working. We have the worst of both worlds at the moment. We have a legal massive immigration policy which is making us poorer because it's bringing in low-wage, low-skill, non-European migrants who we now know from the Office of Budget Responsibility and elsewhere are a net fiscal cost to the people watching this television show. And we've got masses of illegal migration which is not being put off by our very generous welfare system, by our ridiculous one-in, one-out policy, and a political class in Westminster that, let's be frank, isn't really interested in defending or protecting the British people anymore. And there's no answer. There's no answer from the Lib Dems. There's no answer from Labour. There's certainly no answer from the open border fanatics in the Green Party. The only party I can see that's actually getting real about this is Reform.
The issue is, if you cut off benefits to migrants, that would immediately act as a deterrent, and it would stop us being a magnet for people coming into the United Kingdom. If you say you've got to pay into the system for 10 years, 15 years before you can access the NHS for free, or to access our welfare state, then that would act as a massive deterrent to people coming in, both legally and illegally.
Leave the ECHR, repeal the Human Rights Act, detain the poor.
That's certainly not what we should be doing, trampling over people's rights.
I'm going to pause it again. This is every single politician on the left will say you want to trample over people's rights. It's like before we enshrined the ECHR and incorporated the ECHR framework into British law in 1998 with the Human Rights Act. We didn't have any human rights in the United Kingdom. That's not true at all. If anything, both being party to the ECHR treaty and enshrining major parts of that policy into UK law, we're actually handcuffed. We can't do anything because the ECHR says no. That is a foreign power, that is a foreign court, telling us, a supposed sovereign nation, what we can and can't do with our own country. The ECHR was not created for Britain, it was created for the mainland continent after World War II. Let's be clear on these things.
And there's certainly no answer from Reform on this, because these are Farage boats, essentially.
That's ridiculous.
Because ever since Brexit,
Absolutely.
why has there been a massive amount of boats coming over to this country since Brexit? Is because exactly what I've just said before. So the low-wage, low-skilled workers are coming here because we've sent people back from the European Union, because we've made this country not a desirable place to come for them anymore. And what would your proposal be for the NHS?
They're not Farage boats. I think he's referring to something known as the Dublin Convention, which we were party to when we were in the European Union. Under that convention, which allowed British government to send migrants back to the country of origin if they arrived in the UK illegally, if it was in the European Union, we actually received more in by that convention than we had removed. So it wasn't a detriment and we didn't even use it. This is what they'll say. They'll pin everything on Farage, they'll pin everything on Brexit, they need to make him the bogeyman and say it's all his fault. It wasn't the Farage votes. Farage has never been Prime Minister. Alright? If anything, the Cameron and Clegg boats, or May boats, or Boris boats, they're not Farage boats, let's be clear.
The people that come here and work in our NHS and keep this country going, what would your proposal be?
I'll give you my... Let's just deal with this head on, because this is important, the NHS, right? Do you know what percentage of all Boris Wave visas, all the people, millions of people that came into this country since 2021, do you know what percentage of those visas went to the NHS doctors, went to people working in the NHS?
Sure, you tell me.
Yeah, I will. 0.7%. Do you know how to fix the NHS? You don't have mass immigration. You figure out, why is it that half of all British trained doctors in this country can't get jobs in the NHS? Why is it that 18,000 British kids who wanted to go to medical schools, who wanted to actually become doctors, were rejected by medical schools? Why is that, Carl? The answer is, they're too expensive.
That's partly true. That's partly true. However, the British Medical Association, essentially the doctors and nurses trade union in the United Kingdom, in the early 2000s, they actually voted against increasing doctor and nurse places for native Brits, because they wanted to keep the prestige and the exclusivity of their industry, and to protect their own arses in terms of wages. So there's many great British women and men that would like to be in the healthcare profession, but the government would prefer to outsource it and rob other countries of their doctors and nurses because it's cheaper. Now, Matt's going to bring up this point in a minute also. How is that ethical? How can anyone on the left ethically think that that's justifiable? You're strip mining resource, human resource, from the third world for Britain. How is that a policy that anyone on the left can get on board with? And if you think Labour's going to do anything about that, you're mistaken. They're extending foreign working visas for NHS workers, and they're doing that continuously because it's cheaper. This is your Labour Party. British jobs for British workers, not under Labour. And on the previous point regarding the healthcare visas, I think he referred specifically to doctors. In 2024 specifically, 75% of healthcare workers were issued to dependents, not the workers themselves. So bear that in mind when they say, we need the doctors and the nurses. No, we don't.
Our institutions would rather import less well-qualified doctors, less well-qualified medical professionals from the third world, who, by the way, we are simultaneously being asked to give £15 billion a year to in foreign aid while taking their doctors and taking their medical professionals, which is completely absurd, while British kids here are not able to be trained to become doctors. What we need, if you want to fix the NHS, is a principle of national preference put into this country. We put British kids first. We put British trained doctors first. We actually value our citizens and we put them to work in the NHS, because what you're proposing is mass endless immigration, which gives us more of this managed decline that we're living with at the moment.
But let's separate two of those things out for a moment, because the first part of that I actually agree with, which is that if you are trained as a doctor in this country, you should have the opportunity to become a doctor in this country. But we're not opening our borders up to just anyone to come in here and be a doctor who is less skilled than people in this country.
That's exactly what the evidence shows.
That is absolutely not true.
They take a qualification called the PLAB.
I've spoken to plenty myself. That is not.
Virtually every member of my family works in the NHS. Doctors and medical professionals from outside of the UK take something called the PLAB examination, the qualification, which is the equivalent, essentially, of what UK trained doctors take. There are studies in the British Medical Journal and elsewhere that show that trains them to a lower standard than their UK equivalents. So we are taking people from the third world, developing nations, who should stay there and help their own people and help their countries, and we're ushering them into the NHS and we're putting British patients at risk. Now, the Lib Dems, given that you talk a lot about ethics and morality, why aren't you on this show saying, you know what, it is right that we support those countries by keeping people in those countries. It is right that we secure our borders here in the UK, because if we don't, public support for welfare will collapse, public support for the common good will collapse. Why aren't Liberals and Lib Dems ever making that argument?
I'll leave that one there for a moment. I just want to add a quick aside to what Matt said there, which is only 14% of visas issued recently, I think it was in 2023 or 2024, only 14% actually went to workers. So the rest were study visas, holiday visas, dependents.
Well, I suppose the argument that you're talking about there, Matt, to keep doctors in those countries, I would like to hear how you would do that, because if you haven't got foreign aid in order to do that, how do you keep doctors in those countries? The thing that we need to do is incentivise doctors in these countries, people who go to university to become doctors and then to be trained up in the NHS and to become the consultants of the future. I think reforms plan of actually what
leave the European Convention on Human Rights, repeal Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, detain the poor.
You want to trample over people's rights in order to deport people. That's fine if you've got someone.
That's not trampling over people's rights.
That's fine if you've got someone that you believe in to be Prime Minister. But what about the Prime Minister after that?
This is a interesting point. When Farage gets in with Reform UK for the next government, he can be voted out in 5 years. So if he removes the ECHR and the Court of Human Rights, 1998 Human Rights Act, and he removes that, abolishes the Supreme Court, take us back to pre-2009 footing, with the lawyers back in the House of Lords. If it's not effective and people don't like what's happened, they can vote Farage out and they can vote someone else in that's going to reverse tack. This is the point of democracy, alright? This is the issue with the consensus that's grown up over the past 30 years, is there's been no change in direction or course, and Britain has been actively rejecting it since at least 2010, and nobody's done anything about it. The reason why we got a bad Brexit deal is because nobody delivering or trying to deliver Brexit believed in it. The establishments down in London don't believe in it, and we sent them a big FU with Brexit, and they didn't like that. We've not got a proper deal. We've not got anything of the sort. We've not got anything that we could have got. Brexit in principle isn't the problem. It's the implementation that's the problem. We all know this.
And the Prime Minister after that.
I want what many European nations are currently talking about. Okay, I was in the European Parliament 2 weeks ago. Everybody now accepts that post-1945 refugee conventions are no longer working. The international treaties are no longer working. We need to revise all of them. Reform actually have had the courage, the guts and the intellect to stand up and say this isn't working for British people anymore. And by the way, while we're at it, we shouldn't be spending £10 billion on welfare benefits for people who aren't British, which is another statistic that came up this week. That is obscene to me.
How is it anybody that's not naturalised citizen or native citizen of the United Kingdom, or the Republic of Ireland for that matter, I'll include the Republic of Ireland in on this as well, why have they got access to our welfare states? Why? I wouldn't be able to walk up to America or Australia and go, right, give me some money please, free house, free everything. Why? I'm a refugee. It just wouldn't happen. People can't. If people can't see that we're having the piss taken out of us, then I don't know what to tell you.
During the worst cost of living crisis since the Second World War, we are forcing British people to pay £10 billion a year on welfare benefits for people who aren't even British. Reform are the only party that have said openly, we will restrict welfare benefits to British people. That is the right thing to do, the ethical thing to do. The reason you won't do that is because liberals, Lib Dems, believe in universal rights. You think everybody is the same as everybody else and every culture is just as impressive as every other culture, and that simply isn't true. So that is why we're in this managed decline.
Completely agree. No, not all cultures are equal. The Western world is an outlier. It's not the rule. If you look at the rest of the world, people don't live the way that we do in the West. Alright? We're a very small portion of the world. You need to wise up to that. Not everybody, most people outside of the West do not think and act the way that we do. That is not an accident. That's why up until about the mid-90s, we had a pretty damn good civilization, and that was all going down the tube because of ideology, not on-the-ground policies, not actual data-driven research in the impact of mass migration, just because, oh, we want to be nice.
That is why the social contract is collapsing.
So you're saying that not everyone has the same fundamental rights as other people?
I'm saying nation states should put the tax-paying, hard-working, law-abiding majority first.
That's not what you said in that statement, though.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
It's not at all.
That's
You just
exactly
said
what I'm
that
saying.
not everyone
Nation
is
states should
equal.
prioritize.
Not everyone should be equal when it comes to welfare payments and benefits. If you're not born in the UK, you don't get it. It's as simple as.
National citizens.
Well, yeah, I mean, is that a controversial statement? That actually, when it comes to fundamental rights, for example, to access the benefit system in this country, everyone shouldn't always be equal. No, a British citizen should have priority access to the British welfare state over and above non-UK nationals. That's not controversial, is it?
That's not what Matt's saying, though. He's saying fundamentally that people aren't the same or equal under the eyes of.
I don't think all cultures are equal, no. And I think.
Again, he's exposed himself there. He believes in the universal person. Abdul from Kabul is just as civilized as me or you. That's not the case. That really isn't the case. Not all cultures are the same.
You can see that, for example, in the rates of unemployment and social housing reliance among Somalis in the UK.
That's a very important point that he's made regarding Somalis in the UK. I'm going to drop the graphic on the screen now. It's telling, isn't it? Why is a single one of these in social housing? Why is a single one of these people in social housing that we're paying for? How many of our own children, our own family members, are on the list for a house, but because they're not a priority, they don't get anything? They've not knocked anybody up, they've not got anyone pregnant, they're trying to pay the taxes, they're trying to do everything by, doing the right thing in the country, paying into the system. You go to your local council to ask for a house and they go, well, you can't actually have a house or even a flat. You're not priority enough. You're not been irresponsible to get lots of different girls pregnant. You're not with any of them. And this family from Somalia, they've not got a job, but they need a social house.
They just come from a fundamentally different culture to ours.
Well, there you go. What do you make to what you're hearing, ladies and gents?
So we'll leave that one there. That's pretty humiliating for the Liberal Democrats, wasn't it? Good Lord. It was absolutely painful to watch. Now, the situation is with the Lib Dems and with Labour, they're going to make the next 4 years about anti-Farage, anti-Brexit. They're going to be on that hobby horse, and they're going to try to conflate Farage with Brexit to say, listen, all the problems in the country are Farage's fault. Do you really want him to be Prime Minister? Do the digging, do the research yourself. It's not because of Farage, it's not because of Brexit. It's the calibre of politician in the country is so incompetent, and they're so used to outsourcing any responsibility or anything of note to a Quango, which is a non-government organisation, an NGO basically, quasi-semi-autonomous departments that essentially tell the government on how to behave on a particular subject. Alright? They're so used to deferring, or looking at the EU and blaming them, that they're not used to making decisions themselves, and they're freaking out. That's why, since Brexit, nothing has fundamentally changed. Because none of the politicians actually have the that the more fortitude to do what's right. Now, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, give me a like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you in the next one later on today. Have a good evening.